All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, we've all got your stimulus bill news covered here on Rising this morning, but there's one story that we know we have our eye on at the ball, on which had important developments over the weekend that I want to make sure that you are sped up on. That is the multiple political crises in New York State surrounding Governor Andrew Cuomo. Cuomo, after nearly a year of universally fawning press coverage, is now beginning to be covered in the way he should have been all along. The result is a story which exposes not only a man, but the vacuousness of our entire political press. First is this story from the New York Times, that Cuomo's top aides literally rewrote a nursing home report to hide a higher death toll. The report itself is stunning, even though that we knew the broad contours, showing direct evidence of a cover-up in June, where the true death toll in New York was 9,000 people in nursing homes. The government rewrote that report to revise the number 50%. Yes, 50% downward. Even more stunning is this revelation. The report was doctored at the very same time that the governor began writing his best-selling book on the handling of the coronavirus. Cuomo-sexuals and Cuomo-splainers have said, well, he did it because he felt he was under pressure from federal authorities. Wrong. According to the report itself, him and his aides have been doing this months before federal authorities even requested any data, knowing that their handling of the pandemic in nursing homes was a disaster and the terrible optics of perpetuating a policy that not only killed thousands of people, but also benefited Cuomo donors in a big way. And while I commend the New York Times for this story and the newfound sense of responsibility amongst the political press, we also have to say it's awfully convenient that it's only now, when it no longer matters as much politically, that all of this is beginning to come out. The broad contours of the Cuomo nursing home scandal have been known to anyone with eyes and ears for 7 to 8 months, longer, in fact. I went back and checked. One of the most popular parts of Crystal and my appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast in June 2020 was discussing exactly this. The facts were there for anyone who wanted to listen. In fact, my old colleague, Andrew Kerr at the Daily Caller, reported this back on May 15th, 2020, almost 10 months to the day of all of this reporting, noting that if you read between the lines, New York is admittedly undercounting nursing home deaths after screwing with the reporting dynamics, which point directly to a cover-up. David Sirota, friend of the show, he's been reporting on this second element for months. I went back and checked. Look at the date. He first wrote this for The Guardian on May 26, 2020, how Cuomo is giving nursing home immunity executives after big campaign donations, pointing to a corporate liability shield implemented by the New York governor. It's simple, and it was all right there for anyone who cared to know. And the bankruptcy of all of this is a BS excuse from the Times and the rest of the press that they follow the story only when the facts will lead them there. Imagine if New York Times back in May actually dedicated its State House reporters to this beat, or dedicated the millions of dollars in reporting resources that they have at their disposal. They could have broken this no problem. David Sirota doesn't even live in New York. He's one guy, and he writes from Denver. Andrew Kerr lives here in D.C. If all the data was there for them to piece together, being great sleuths online, imagine if the press corps, who literally live in New York and cover these politics for a living, got involved. As I've said here before, the most pernicious form of media bias is not disparities in what the media covers. It's what they choose not to cover, what they choose not to show you, which is far more powerful than anything they choose to do. And the deliberate choice by the political press at the time to not cover Cuomo skeptically is itself the worst form of media bias that exists. I found a clip from this weekend. It illustrates this perfectly. While David Sirota was covering the story, and so was Andrew Kerr, this is what the rest of them were doing. Let's take a listen.
How would you contrast Cuomo and President Trump's handling of the crisis?
Truth versus mendacity.
Governor Cuomo out there day after day after day, everything Trump isn't. Honest, direct, brave.
Real leadership of the kind the President of the United States should have provided.
Governor Cuomo is clearly living in a totally different reality, the actual one, than the President of the United States.
Governor Cuomo has become a national leader.
For a lot of people, Andrew Cuomo has become the leader of the Democratic Party.
He is conveying incredible strength.
You spoke to National Guard troops today in a stirring speech that, if I wasn't listening carefully, I thought you were sending soldiers off to war.
This has been a remarkable show of leadership by Governor Cuomo in recent days. He's providing hope, but not false hope.
Governor Cuomo, I think, is one of the heroes on the front lines.
With all of this adulation that you're getting for doing your job, are you thinking about running for president?
Andrew Cuomo, who has a daily television show now and has become in some ways the shadow president.
Maybe Trump is just a little bit mad that Governor Cuomo has become a kind of acting president.
Dealing with hardship actually makes you stronger. That's what Governor Cuomo said earlier today. That's what I'm going to go teach my kids right now at home.
That wasn't just Chris Cuomo screwing around with his brother. That was the entire media establishment giving a nightly tongue bath to the governor of New York while old people died, while he bailed out his biggest donors, all in the service of, yeah, but Trump is worse, so let's elevate another figure. And unfortunately, it worked. Cuomo may be in hot water now. He may have 4 aides accusing him of some sexual harassment in the workplace. But at this point, it's been 10 months since the crucial decisions were made. Even if he does resign, the media and the New York Democratic apparatchiks are surely planning to have the machine fill a seat. They don't need him to serve as the antithesis of Trump anymore. And so he's no longer served his purpose. At the time when it mattered, for thousands of people's elderly parents, the Fourth Estate, whose job it was to critically cover those in power, abandoned them. So as we continue to move through this crisis, and you see sanctimonious on anchors on your TV ask questions about Cuomo, remember what they were saying only a few short months ago. And then, more importantly, check out who they're giving a tongue bath to now, today, and think about all the critical reporting they could be doing instead. There is an immense cost to our society of a political press that refuses to do its job. And if you don't believe me, you can ask anyone who lost an elderly relative to coronavirus in a New York State nursing home. It's pretty amazing, right, when you go and you check the timestamps on some of these articles. I remember, actually, that caller one, and David Sirota's one as well, that we talked about on Rogan's podcast, and that was 8 months ago.
Right.
And you can see the stories. I mean, you see, like, Andrew Kerr's prediction there. He's like, they changed something. They're almost certainly covering it up. Remember how this all even started. It's not that the press uncovered this. It's that the New York State Attorney General was doing an investigation, and it was only after the aide was questioned by the New York legislature that that was leaked out. But if they wanted to, it was all right there.
Yeah.
David Sirota, all he has to do, he can read. He's like reading this liability shield. He's like, this is crazy. Checking out, FEC records or whatever and looking at donations, it was all out there in the open. And I love that example because you have right-wing media and left-wing media just doing something that the regular media refuses to do.
Basic reporting.
The entire thing was right there.
What I love now is, by the way, Brian Stelter really went the extra mile there, didn't he? I mean, there are politicians that I have favorable opinion of. If I ever, oh my God, it's so embarrassing. It's so cringe. Anyway, now I love how they're all like, well, everybody's long known that Cuomo's a bully, and none of this is surprising. It's like, they're actually right. I mean, this was widely known that his behavior was frankly very Trumpian, that he does have this reputation for bullying, especially if you live and work in New York and know anyone who's ever been anywhere near him. You knew he wasn't this patron saint of goodness. Right. That was all right there. It was easily known and discoverable, and yet they just chose to present this other weird, glowing portrait because, it was convenient for them. This whole MSNBC really went all in on this two presidents, shadow president narrative night after night. I played a clip here of Rachel Maddow saying the same thing. They all picked up this talking point of Andrew Cuomo's our real president. And then, lo and behold, he's engaging in behavior that, frankly, is very reminiscent of a lot of the things that Donald Trump, the lies, the cover-up, et cetera. I also find it really interesting that they ever thought it was a good excuse that he changed the nursing home numbers because he was under pressure from federal authorities.
Right.
That's not an excuse.
It's not an excuse.
That's not, imagine.
Yeah, but it's Trump's government, so
it's Trump,
it's
right.
okay.
Imagine the feds were investigating you or me and we're like, oh, well, we lied just to get away with it. That's not an excuse. But now that even that terrible cover-up lie was revealed as a complete fabrication.
It's totally false.
Completely false. But yet, up until now, the press completely bought it. Cuomo would always frame this as, these are just partisan attacks. This is just a partisan attack on me from Republicans and from the Trump administration because they don't like me and they don't like Democrats and they're embarrassed at what a great job I've done. And they basically bought that until you're right. The Democratic Attorney General, Letitia James, did an investigation.
She did their job for them.
did their job for them, uncovered the numbers, and that's when the whole cookie started to crumble.
It's simple. Look, the Times has people who cover this, Albany, the state press, everybody has people who literally sit there, and this is their entire jobs. And some guys sitting in Denver and D.C. are the ones who figure it out. Why? How does that happen? Somebody tell me. Because otherwise these people should probably be fired. Or maybe they knew about it. Or, even better, they just didn't care to know. Because they're like, that's not a real story for me. That's not going to get the clicks. My editor might give me pushback and more. And this is how that happens. And I just think that it bears some real investigation now that we're on the tail end of this thing to say, look, breadcrumb's been there for 10 months. Where the hell have you been?
Yeah.
In some ways, yeah, it's great. The Times reports this. Why now? Why not when it actually mattered? And I think I know the answer.
There you go.
All right, I'm looking forward to your radar next, Crystal.